any objections?
Mr. President.
The senator from Texas.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, let me say I appreciate the passion of my colleagues from Virginia. I've served with both of them for 12 years. Senator Kaine and I both were elected together in 2012. He and I have worked together on many issues, and I anticipate we will work together on many issues going forward. On this issue, he and I see the issue very differently. This bill that is before the Senate is a bill that moved forward the right way. It moved forward, frankly, a way I wish a lot more legislation proceeded in the Senate. This bill proceeded through regular order. It began in committee. The Commerce Committee took it up. We had a series of markups scheduled over several months. In the process of drafting this bill, we solicited the input initially of every senator on the Commerce Committee. And every single senator, Democrat and Republican, has priorities that are reflected in the underlying bill that were adopted. After the bill came out of the Commerce Committee, we solicited the input of every other senator, those not on the Commerce Committee, for their ideas, their priorities for their respective states. This bill contains over 200 member priorities from Democrats and Republicans reflecting the different needs and the different priorities of our 50 states. In addition to all of those, this week, we added 9 more amendments in a manager's package when the majority leader laid down the substitute earlier this week. This is an amendment that reflects the consensus view of this body, which is why I anticipate shortly we will see an overwhelming bipartisan vote passing the FAA bill. Now, on the question of slots, in the committee initially, an amendment was offered by Senator Rafael, a Democrat from Georgia, to expand the number of slots at D.C. Reagan Airport by 28 slots. That was an amendment that had a lot in its favor, but it also prompted furious lobbying on the other side. Ultimately, what the committee did is work to seek common ground, work to seek a compromise. Senator Warnock's amendment of 28 slots was not adopted. Instead, what was adopted was an amendment that I drafted, working hand in hand with the chairman of the committee, Senator Cantwell, that went down from 28 slots to merely 5 slots. Now, several arguments have been raised against creating any additional slots at Reagan. One argument is pointing to the recent near miss at DCA Reagan as evidence that no additional flights can go into or out of Reagan. However, it is worth noting that the FAA experts have recently clarified that this near miss had absolutely nothing to do with traffic on the runway, that it was unrelated issues that produced the near miss, and I might note those unrelated issues include what this underlying bill addresses, which is ensuring we have sufficient air traffic controllers to monitor the traffic and protect safety. Another argument used by opponents of adding new flights to Reagan is the argument that DCA was originally designed to accommodate 15 million passengers annually, and that in 2023 it served 25.5 million passengers. What that argument fails to acknowledge is that DCA has made significant investments to increase capacity, including adding more gates and expanding terminals. Opponents of additional flights have also claimed that DCA is overburdened by its current flights and that DCA flights are already delayed. What that argument omits is the fact that DCA has a better on-time arrival rate than either Dulles or BWI. It has the best on-time arrival rate of the 3 airports in this immediate vicinity. I would note the most voracious opposition to this amendment comes from lobbying on behalf of United Airlines. And the reason is not complicated to ascertain. United has a near monopoly position at Dulles Airport. And United understandably wants to preserve its monopoly profits. 5 new flights into and out of Reagan Airport would provide additional competition that would predictably lower the price of tickets. It's not surprising that United Airlines doesn't want tickets to go down. They want to continue charging monopoly prices. I will point out for the people of Virginia and the people of Maryland and the people of D.C., limiting supply, allowing United to reap monopoly profits, and raising prices is not a good outcome. And for that reason, this bill as drafted, with the new flights, will benefit the people of Virginia, the people of Maryland, and the people of D.C. Indeed, in a recent poll, 67% of Northern Virginians support adding flights to DCA. This bill improves competition, and in terms of the overall traffic, there are right now 800 slots at DC Reagan. When this bill is adopted, it will go from 800 to 805. So it is a small, reasonable increase. I would also point out DCA Reagan is the only airport in the country that has federal slot control and a restriction on long-haul flights. This restriction is in no other airline in the country, and there's a long protectionist history as to why this one airport is subject to these restrictions. I want to make one final point. In addition to being a benefit for everyone going to our nation's capital or from our nation's capital, a benefit that impacts the entire country. Americans from all 50 states travel to Washington, D.C., to our nation's capital, whether it's school kids coming to tour the Capitol, whether it's families coming to the Smithsonian, whether it is people coming to the Holocaust Museum or the Lincoln Memorial, whether it's people coming to see the cherry blossoms. Everyone coming to and from D.C. will benefit from this provision, but there's also a very particular benefit to my home state of Texas, and that understandably is near and dear to my heart. This issue first came to my attention about 3 years ago. And it came to my attention because a delegation from the city of San Antonio came to my office. That delegation included business leaders, it included community leaders, it included elected leaders in San Antonio, most of whom are Democrats. And to a person, they were deeply, deeply dismayed that the city of San Antonio does not have even one direct flight to DCA Reagan. Now, San Antonio is today the 7th largest city in America. San Antonio is the 2nd largest city in Texas. San Antonio actually has a higher population than Dallas, Texas. San Antonio also has an enormous military population. Indeed, the city's nickname is Military City, USA. And there's an enormous population of active duty military and veterans who live in San Antonio. DCA Reagan is right next to the Pentagon, and it's right next to Arlington Memorial Cemetery. I can tell you the community of San Antonio is united on a bipartisan basis that San Antonio deserves a direct flight to and from Reagan, that it will save money for residents of San Antonio, that it will generate jobs for residents of San Antonio, and that it is only fair for residents of San Antonio that they be able to come directly to DCA Reagan. And as a result of this bill that the Senate is preparing to vote on, San Antonio is going to win a major bipartisan vote to get that flight. And my final observation, Senator Warner said in the past, a bipartisan compromise had been reached on this issue. I would note that happened here too. This bill that was voted out of committee was a bipartisan compromise. It was a compromise that was negotiated between me, the ranking member on the committee, and Senator Cantwell, the chairman of the committee, a Republican and a Democrat, and this provision was added to the bill and voted out of the committee unanimously. Every Democrat voted for it, every Republican voted for it, because it is a reasonable provision that benefits consumers and is fair. Therefore, Mr. President, I object.
The objection is heard.